Hey everybody, so today we're going to learn the second system related to plants. Remember the first system was the root system, and the only organ that it entailed was roots. And then the shoot system, it has three organs. So it's got stems, leaves, and flowers. So we're going to talk first about stems. Now we understand that stems, they typically grow above the ground. They typically can have leaves on them and can support and grow a flower. Not all plants grow flowers, but majority of them. Now, if you look at these pictures of these stems, they are all different. They're all unique. This stem is long grasses that allows it to bend and be flexible with the wind. This stem is a thicker stem because it's got a much bigger, broader flower, heavier flower to support. So it's going to be a thicker stem, not as bendable. Right? More grass stems over here. Now this one, you probably recognize this is bamboo. Bamboo is way strong. It can grow really, really, really tall. It's really thick. It's almost like, a tree trunk. And bamboo is strong enough to where those pandas are able to climb up and use the bamboo to climbing up with. And then you should recognize the roses, and it's got little prickly thorns on it, help prevent predators from eating it. So that's a great trait for this plant. These stems are similar to like our cells. They're all unique. They're all different. They all have different functions, different shapes to do those different functions. So there's your stems. Now within the stems, there's two different tissues. Okay. Phloem and xylem. The thing about phloem is it says a tissue that conducts synthesized food. Conducts means to transport, and synthesize means food that's made. So it's transporting food, and that would be our glucose that's made in photosynthesis. So it's going to transport food to substances, to the parts where it's needed, transporting the food made in the leaves, and it can be made in the leaves. The majority is made in the leaves, but it also can be made in the stems. Hence the reason why our stems are green, because they got chloroplast and chlorophyll in them. Anyways, they can transfer the food made in the leaves down the stems and into the roots, so it can flow down. It can go down, but it also can go up. You got to think, your flowers have also got to get glucose. They got to get food. They got to get energy. So phloem can go up and down the plant. So here's these tubes we're looking at. So here's the stem. And inside you have these little tubes, kind of like your arteries and veins, right? And phloem, in this case, is the purple ones. And it can go up and down, transporting glucose wherever it needs to go to in the plant. Now xylem, it acts as a protective layer. So you got xylem on the outside of the plant, as well as xylem within the stem to help transport water. So it tells you it acts as a protective layer on the outside of the plant, which helps prevent damage and water loss. It absorbs water and minerals through the roots and transport them up the stem and into the leaves. So xylem can only go one direction, which should make sense because that's where it's absorbing the water and minerals, is in the roots. So it absorbs it and then it brings it on up. So this is just looking, if we go back to this picture. So right now we're just zooming in on the pink. That's the xylem. So within the same large tube, you have smaller tubes of phloem and xylem. So in this stem, here's a larger tube, and inside of it, you've got phloem and xylem, phloem and xylem, phloem and xylem. And remember, phloem transports food up and down. It's got to get to the roots, and it's got to get up to the flower. But xylem, it starts in the roots, and then it only can move up. So here is looking at these xylem tubes. Very cool. And then here's looking at xylem as far as being the outer protective layer of the plant. So you do see xylem on the outside helping to protect it, as well as the tubes. So xylem and phloem is very similar to our arteries and our veins. So here's a picture of xylem. Once again, it can only go up the plant, absorbing water from the roots, minerals on up. Notice the walls of the xylem vessel, the tube. They're really thick. It's trying to prevent any type of water loss through transpiration. Remember, transpiration is liquid water leaving plants from a liquid to a gas. So we're trying to resist that from happening. Over here, the phloem, once again, phloem is transporting glucose and food. It can go up and it can go down. And look how thin these walls are. And that's important because we're trying to not let the glucose, I shouldn't say not try to let glucose. We're trying to let the glucose go through the walls a lot easier because it's a larger molecule, so it's harder for it to diffuse into the surrounding cells. So the walls are a lot thinner, allowing that larger molecule to diffuse through. All right, so that's xylem and phloem, similar to our arteries and veins. Okay. One more picture. I like this because here the water is being absorbed in through the roots. And once again, xylem only goes up one direction. Now you guys have seen, I don't know, on TV where you have people with two sticks and they're walking along, and then when those sticks cross each other, it makes an X, marks a spot, and that's where water is. So that could help you remember that xylem is the water and the phloem, I think of potatoes, but that's just because I'm an Idaho potato girl, but phloem is the food, the glucose, the sugars. All right, anyway, so here's a xylem taking up the water up through the roots. Once again, it's brown, doesn't have chloroplast, it doesn't do photosynthesis. And then poof, now you got chlorophyll, chloroplast. Anyway, so it's absorbing it. And at some point, when it comes up through the stem and goes through the leaves, there's holes, pores, just like we have pores. And those gases can escape out of those pores. And that's what you can see right here. Here's the plant cell, and water's diffusing from one cell to the next. And then unfortunately it can diffuse out of the cell, and that would be transpiration. All right, so what does phloem do? Transports glucose up and down. And what does xylem do? And that transports water up the plant. All right. Okay, so the second organ that is a part of the shoot system is your leaves. Okay, and the biggest thing is the leaf contains veins and stomatas. Now, those veins, that's what holds your xylem and your phloem, right? And then the stomatas, those are pores. Those are holes that allow gases to come in and out or water vapor to leave. So veins carry nutrients and water through the leaf. And then stomatas, those are the pores in the epidermis of the leaf that allow gases and water vapors to pass. So, I'm going to pause this real quick. All right, so I want to just show you a picture. I know we're familiar with what these veins are, but here's those veins that we're talking about that are in the leaf. And inside this vein is where you're going to find your xylem and your phloem, your tubes. Then it branches, just like our veins do, into smaller veins. And it branches and branches. And so every time you see these little cracked lines, inside them is xylem and phloem that's allowing water and glucose and food to get to all of the plant cells. Now this one, okay, here is looking at the leaf, cross-section of it. So here's the top part of the leaf. And there's the stomatas. Those are the openings that allow gases to go in and out or water vapor to leave. So there's the gases. And you can see in here, there's the veins carrying your xylem and your phloem. Okay? And then here's your filling cells. And we're not going to necessarily worry about what all that is right now, but there's the veins carrying xylem and phloem, and then there's your stomatas allowing gases to go in and out. Okay. Now you don't need to write any of this down, but I want you to just think about those gases that are being exchanged through the stomata. So here's photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide goes in through the stomata, and then it can do that carbon dioxide, sunlight, water, and then it can do photosynthesis and make glucose and oxygen. So oxygen's going to leave. Water vapor could leave, once again through transpiration, bringing it up. Oxygen's going in to do cellular respiration. Carbon dioxide's coming out as a result. So you just have these gases that are constantly going in and out. So it's so important that these leaves have these stomatas, these openings that allow gases to go through. So there's your little stomatas. Here's an example where the stomatas are closed. And then here's a blown up picture where the stomata is opened here, open, open, close, close. So you got to think, if the plant is losing a lot of water, then it's a bad thing to have stomatas open all the time, because then water vapor is leaving the plant. So Usually when it comes to plants, most of their stomatas, they are not on the top of the leaf because that's where sunlight pulls a lot of water. The majority of the stomatas are actually under the leaf, so gases can still be exchanged and it doesn't lose as much water. Okay, so the third organ that's part of your shoot system is flowers. Okay? So flowers, their main job is they're responsible for reproduction. They're the ones that produce the seeds to continue to allow the plant to grow, a new plant. So flowers are the plant's reproductive structures. Flowers are usually both male and female. Usually, not all plants have the male and female parts all in the same spot. They are brightly colored to help attract insects, to help carry pollen for sexual reproduction. And so when we look at these things, for that pollination to happen, you got to be able to attract those insects and bugs like the bee right here on top of the flower that's helping to spread that pollen to other places. And just to keep in mind that like not all flowers all are bright and pretty. Sometimes wind is actually the tool that allows the pollen from here, the anther, move to the pistil, which is right here. So this is the male part of the flower, okay, the stamen, and this is the female part of the flower, the pistil. So you got the stamen and the pistil. So this flower has both the male and the female parts. But once again, not all plants have it that way. So I want to show you a picture of corn here. So you look down here, like the silks that comes out of this corn husk, that is the female part. And up here is the tassels, that's where all the male pollen is. So the male pollen and the female they're not right by each other like a typical flower. So sometimes they're by each other, sometimes they're not. But once this pollen falls down, then it's been pollinated. And if it's pollen from the same plant, then that would be asexual reproduction because the same plant created new ones. Okay. Now, typically this is where we do a flower dissection and we get a look at things underneath the microscope. And here's some pictures that I took. So this is actually looking at the petals. You can see, once again, the individual cells that make up the petals, the nucleuses. I just love their bright colors. And these are pollen grains. So a lot of you guys that are allergic to pollen and have lots of allergies, this is the culprit. This is the stuff that gets in there and your body reacts. We'll kind of keep rolling. So now we're looking at here. This is the female part of the plant. This is the ovary. And inside are these ovules. And this is what gets pollinated that creates the seeds. So that was a really cool picture. Oh, oops. Here you can see this is just looking at the leaf plant cells. So there's your individual plant cells. You can see all the chloroplasts, the vacuole. Now this is part of the female part of the flower. I did not take this picture. This is stolen from the internet. But here is the pistil, and this is what catches the pollen. So it's kind of sticky that allows these pollen grains right here to stick to it. Okay, this is where we get into the digestive system, but I'm going to actually make a different video for this because this one's running out of time.